The biggest construction projects around the world cost tons of money and take loads of planning to make sure they're actually necessary in the long term. But nothing's perfect and things don't always go as planned. So, as a result, whether it be loss of will or loss of money, there are plenty of structures throughout the world that simply just haven't been finished. On this episode of Built a Billion, we'll take a look at the largest canceled construction projects of the world. But make sure you finish this video because we saved the most unbelievable for last. If you love to hear about all the mega projects of the world, be sure to click that subscribe button and leave a like. Wonderland Park, Beijing. It was supposed to be the largest amusement park in Asia that would copy proven theme parks across its 120 acres, but it turned out to be China just biting off more than they could chew again. In 1998, work was halted on China's proposed theme park for financial reasons. When construction tried to restart 10 years later, it failed again due to more financial difficulties, and it hasn't been touched since. The saddest part of the story is that people actually come here to visit the incomplete castle and structures anyway, and have made it the saddest tourist destination attraction on Earth. Farmers who were forced to sell their land for the project even took the land back and started growing their crops there again. The authorities demolished the sad affair, and now a shopping mall stands where the castle once did. Alai Minar, India. The Alai Minar was an enormous monument that was supposed to be the vanity project of a sultan celebrating the success of his conquering of huge areas of India. With the spoils of his conquest, the sultan wished to quadruple the size of the mosque and build a new minar, or tower, that would be twice the size of a tower that wasn't too far away. Construction began in 1300, but had only made it to its first story by the year 1316, the year of the sultan's death. After he died, work on the minar was cancelled immediately and left to ruin. Today the remains stand in the shadow of the minar it was originally meant to be taller than. Kangbashi, China. Back to China then? The government decided to build several huge districts to compensate for China's urban expansion. This has worked in some places, but there are a few that have failed. One such location is Kangbashi, with its capacity of 1 million people. The actual district hasn't seen more than 20 or 30,000 people at any time, which has canceled any further development in the project. The mega project costed $160 billion and in theory should have been successful, but most buildings were bought by investors that had no intention of living there. They were just hoping to rent them out, but no one was willing to pay prices that would make the investment make sense. Naturally, property prices fell and investors have to hope things will turn out well. Hey, that rhymed. Kangbashi is now one of China's many failed ghost cities, and there is hope that it can still turn into a bustling metropolis. But until it does, it'll stay right here on our list. National Monument of Scotland. In Edinburgh lies the National Monument of Scotland, but don't be fooled, it isn't finished. It's a memorial to Scotland's soldiers and sailors who perished in the Napoleonic Wars. Designed in the 1820s, it was inspired by the Parthenon in Greece, and Scotland's monument was intended to be just as awe-inspiring as the Greek one. In 1822, a stone foundation weighing 6 tons was placed down, with its structure taking form 4 years later, with plans for it to have a system of catacombs underneath it to bury important members of society. The money ran out, and the project was cancelled by 1829, however, and the project became known as Scotland's Folly and Edinburgh's Disgrace. Although it was declared a listed building in 1866 and has become an unofficial place of remembrance for all service people. Torre de David. Construction on the Torre de David began in the capital of Venezuela, Caracas, in 1990. It was built in hopes of becoming an economic hub, but plans were put on hold in 1994 due to the Venezuelan banking crisis of that same year. Simultaneously, the lead investor behind the project died, leaving the Venezuelan government to take over responsibility, but the construction never restarted. The complex, made up of 6 buildings, are now in a state of disrepair, while also managing to be the 3rd largest building in the country. The building was never used for its intended purpose, but instead has become a towering symbol of wealth inequalities in Caracas. This has never been more apparent than in the 2010s, when families started squatting in the lower levels for shelter. Despite all of this, people still hope that one day, the now earthquake-damaged building will be sold to investors and completed. Bolt Castle, New York. Bolt Castle on Hart Island in the St. Lawrence River, New York, was originally conceived by George Bolt, manager of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, in 1900. His dream was to create the biggest private residence in the US on his island so that he could give it to his wife. Plans were drawn up for the 6-story castle and surrounding structures, and construction began in 1900. In 1904, however, his wife abruptly died and he immediately canceled any further work. He never returned to the island again, and for 73 years, the castle was left to sit in its ominous state of uselessness. That is, until the Bridge Authority purchased it for $1, under the conditions that the house be open to the public and any revenue go back into its restoration. It is said around $50 million has been put into it so far. Hassan Tower, Morocco. In the capital city of Morocco, you'll see multiple structures that are thousands of years old around you. But there's one that may really appeal to you due to it being the beginning of what would have been the biggest mosque in the Western Muslim world. It was commissioned in the late 12th century and was supposed to become the tallest minaret on earth. Construction began in 1191, but by the time the Caliph died in 1199, the minaret was only 144 feet tall, and only a few walls in the mosque had been finished. The minaret was never finished, and the site has now been turned into a historical and tourist site. Cincinnati Subway. There are cities that have created entire tunnel systems underneath them, only to never be used. One of the biggest abandoned tunnel networks in the world is under Cincinnati. In the 1920s, 2 miles were excavated as an upgrade to the streetcar system, but the Great Depression ruined all that, and the tunnels and 7 stations were left to rot. It costed the equivalent of $200 million today to complete the project, and there were plenty of attempts to rekindle the plans in the following decades. But other projects have taken priority, and no one really wants to invest. Today, parts of the tunnel have been repurposed as a route for a water main and a haven for homeless people and explorers. Estimates say it would take $100 million to install a completely new, modern subway today, but it looks like no one's feeling the pressure to make that a reality. What do you think about these canceled construction projects? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think any of them will ever be finished? Also, check the pinned comments to visit the Built-A-Billion merch store to get a t-shirt or something like that. Part 1 of these failed mega projects can be found on the screen, so click that video on the screen to watch something you haven't seen. And thanks for visiting Built-A-Billion.